So from the same book, there's an interesting phrase on the page 9 of the introduction, and it's quite short. It just says that man's character is the product of his premises. And I wanted to go through my rough sketch on a little notepad file here of what I think of the kinds of people that are in the world, and what do they say, and how you can attach those to philosophy. So if you've ever heard of people that say, that's my faith or belief, or say that that's just your opinion, your truth, I can have my truth and you can have your truth, or people who say that things aren't black and white, or people who say that we can't really predict anything, we just have to try out something and then modify the policy based on the results. If you've heard of people like that, I've grouped them together into various areas, and there's a reason why they hold those kinds of views. So there's one group that are, for the most part, religious types that I've labeled the idealists. You might think of Plato, for example. If you've ever read any Plato, you will see, and this was, of course, ancient Greece, and this was before Christianity. You will see all kinds of parallels to Christianity, and many people even say that Christianity it's just really Neo-Platonism. So the Platonists or the idealists, they live in a certain metaphysics. They have certain beliefs about the nature of the universe in terms of having a God up there and things being created. And all that stuff changes how they act in the world. So they have a metaphysics. They say that you must use faith to know certain things because the world is some ways ungraspable, some ways it is graspable, but certainly the fundamentals of the universe are not graspable. They have to come from revelation, so they come from the Bible or whatnot, and those are the ideals. So they say that that's my faith or belief. It's really just you can't question it because it comes from some otherworldly source. So you can't have an argument about it. It's just what they believe. And reason is limited to them because we're human and we're not divine. So when you have a belief there's no facts, the facts are not even relevant, science is not even relevant. This is a metaphysics. This is a view of this existence. Almost like the kind of game we're playing. We're playing a kind of game. And the game is we're in God's universe, right? That's their beliefs. And so a person who believes that, it changes their character. What is their character? Well, it's the kind of things they say, such as that's my faith, that's my belief, etc. Another group that fights the Platonists, essentially, from ancient Greece, the Aristotelian Surrealists. These are the people that think that, as Aristotle did, that every individual, every human being has the potential and capacity to reason about and perceive the world. They can judge. They can make a life for themselves. They can seek happiness. There isn't some game we're playing. And if they believe something, they say that here is the chain of reasoning. Here are the facts. They believe in common sense. Things like that. You may meet people in the world that are like this. Now the next big group is what I call the sophists, which are also from ancient Greece. And there's two kinds that I've sketched out here. There's the nihilists and the pragmatists. Now most people in the world are pragmatists. The next chunk is probably the idealists, the religious types. Okay, so that's the sophists. So if you've ever heard of people, these are the nihilists now. Ever heard of people that say, well, that's just your truth. I have my own truth. Or they say that, well, doesn't truth change with perspective? So there really are no truths. There's no capital T truth in the world. You can't say that something is true forever and always. You can't. There's no such thing as objectivity. There's no objective truths. It's just your opinion. We're just always and forever dealing in opinions. Those are the nihilists. So this comes from Heraclitus, who was an ancient Greek, was a sophist. And actually Plato was the one that first battled the sophists. And they also believe in a kind of metaphysics, but it's a metaphysics of change. This was Heraclitus' his famous quote is that you can't step in the same river twice. And what this means is that the nature of the universe is things are always changing. And think about it for a moment. Isn't every living thing dying? Isn't everything breaking down? Stuff rots, stuff degrades, it gets dust on it, gets broken. Doesn't everything change a little bit? The person you were 5 years ago, what cells in your body are the same? What matter in you was the same 5 years ago? Doesn't everything change? And what this argument is that don't our concepts break down because the matter that compose of objects change? And so can concepts really have their robustness if that's the nature of existence, change? Right? So that is another giant worldview, the nihilists. The nihilists essentially are people who don't value anything and don't think the truth is possible. So that's that type. So if you know people who say those kinds of things, oh, who knows, and we can't really know anything, and stuff like that, those are essentially the nihilists. There's nothing to ground truth on because the world is constantly changing. That's their basic premise, and you can see that in their character. Right? The whole point of this little audio clip is that the philosophy the philosophy that they hold is also shown in their character. So the last group now, the pragmatists. The pragmatists basically, they don't know anything, but they have to wait and see. They can't predict what they're going to, what might work in reality. But once they've tried something out, then they will try to modify it. They're experimenters and scientists. So people who say issues aren't black and white. We just have to try out something and see what the results are and then go from there. Right? The people who don't really want to commit to anything, they don't think you can really put any bounds on something. You kind of have to kind of go with the flow and fly at the seat of your pants and live in the moment and that kind of stuff. Those are the pragmatists. So they believe they have some knowledge. They will allow for some things to be known, but it's never higher concepts. A pragmatist would never have a position on justice, for example. They would say they would in some ways argue for some kind of redistributive justice. They would say that, it kind of depends on the case. They would be less likely to impose lots of rules and sanctions on how justice should go. They would tend to want a judge to have a lot of flexibility to determine justice because each case is a little different, and we can't really have any big, broad concepts of what justice should be. It really should be based on each case. That's a pragmatist. Same with beauty and art and things. Just any higher concept, happiness, they would say, happiness is for the individual. There's no wider concept. And the nihilists would agree with that. That's why I grouped them together with the sophists, as both sophists. They would say that, happiness is an individual thing. You can't make any broad strokes about what happiness is for humanity. You just have to say that everyone has their own little kinks, and that's what a pragmatist would say and a nihilist would say. So they're basically in some ways inseparable from consequentialists or utilitarians. They want to see, what are the results, and then we'll modify as we go. They have very great difficulty in predicting what might happen or accepting any premises before they get started. They want to try something out. They're constant experimenters. If you read in John Dewey, it was called an instrumentalist or experimentalist. That's the pragmatist. They don't want to commit to anything, and they learn a lot from experience, and because they can't, like I said, they don't want to predict anything or begin with any concepts. They want to try things out and experiment and learn from experience. And so then that's why also pragmatists don't believe in any metaphysics. And so they have to just kind of see how the world reacts to what they do. That's one of the consequences of not having any metaphysics for the pragmatists. Unlike the nihilists who think that there is a metaphysics, but it's just amorphous. It's constantly changing. So anyways, so to the original quote, which was that man's character is a product of his premises, I just a rough sketched out 4 different groups of people that you probably know. You probably know a person from each of those groups. The idealists, who are often religious, that have things that they know, but can they prove it to you? No. It's from another universe, in a sense. It's from a supernatural source. and they can't demonstrate what they think is true. See, the thing is, the difference is the idealists do think there is truth, just like the realists think there is truth out there. There is a capital T absolute objective truth. But for the idealists and the Plato type religious people, they can't demonstrate it for you. It's something that is a priori. It's something that is part of their metaphysics, their worldview of religious game that we're playing here. But they do believe in truth. And so I'm sure you know people like that. So they'll say, oh, that's my faith, my belief. I'm sure you know people that are realists, the people that are interested in reasoning things out and making predictions and have common sense views about things. I'm sure you know people who are nihilists that say that, well, that's just your opinion and who knows about anything, and they don't they don't commit to anything, they don't know anything, and they also tend to have a very poor view of the world. They're often pessimists. They think that everything sucks and everything will continue to suck. The pragmatists, I'm sure you know many pragmatists. They tend to be most people, I think, tend to be pragmatists. This is up in Canada, though. Maybe in the States, many people are idealists. But the pragmatists are people who they don't want to commit to anything. They will always preface what they're saying, and they're never sure about anything. And like they're happy to look into things, but they're often non-committal, and they will want to kind of see, well, what's been the results. The pragmatists hate to do anything first. They would rather modify something. They would rather forever graft policies together than make anything new.